Very active day in the NFL by one of the NFL's marquee brands slash teams. But how much does it impact the Texans? We'll get into that. Plus, I think it's undisputed right now who the Texans' best player is. Is that sustainable when it comes to building a contender? Landry Locker, Cody Stutes with you. It is SNL. We had a lot of activity today with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a damn near NBA trade where they trade one of their they trade one of their fan favorites, and in return, they get Jonnu Smith, tight end for Aaron Rodgers, and they get Jalen Ramsay, who seems like he's been on the trade market for the last 5 years, and he's now on his fourth team since 2017 when he burst onto the scene with that Jags team that embarrassed the Texans. What do we make of this Pittsburgh thing? And when it comes to being in the second tier, and we'll get into the teams that are in the second tier, the teams that are trying to take the next step, are the Steelers in that same category as like the Texans and the Broncos and the other teams in the second tier?
This was a pretty surprising trade for me. I feel like you never want to give away the best player in the trade. And that's what I feel like the Steelers did. They traded away the best player in this trade. Minkah Fitzpatrick, and what he does is better than what Ramsay does right now, and is better, obviously, than what Jonnu Smith does. But I guess I was reading some stuff about the way the Steelers didn't love Fitzpatrick and how he acted towards the back end of the season. They wanted to switch some things up. You and I have talked at length about how much Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, loves tight end Jonnu Smith. Had him in Tennessee, had him in Atlanta, now has him in Pittsburgh.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, he loves Jonnu Smith. That's his favorite.
He likes him in the red zone more than Bijan.
Yeah. So Jonnu Smith gets to reunite with Arthur Smith, unfortunately for him, because now he's going to be used in a bunch of 3 tight end sets instead of being a receiver. He's going to be, helping, Pat Fryermuth get open, I guess. I get it for the Steelers. You got to try to maximize this 1-year window with what you have. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, he didn't want to be there, sure. But it does, to me, I wonder how many of these player-for-player swaps get close or get talked about, and we never even hear anything about it.
Yeah, we don't see it very much. It's usually just, one guy for one guy. You don't usually see, well, they also sent this guy and all that. It's kind of there. When it comes to the second tier, though, and localizing what the Steelers did, I would say right now, the second tier of the AFC, and obviously a lot can change, but my second tier, and you can add or subtract teams if you would like, but teams that could make a threat to make the AFC Championship game, and stranger things have happened than them making some sort of Super Bowl run. I would say the second tier right now that the Texans are in, and I'm putting the upper tier, I'm putting Kansas City, I'm putting Baltimore, and I'm putting Buffalo until proven otherwise.
Oh, wow. Buffalo gets the nod.
Buffalo gets the nod. Yes, I put them up there. I
disagree. I don't love their defense. I don't love their defense. I don't like their head coach, and I feel like they're obviously on offense. Right. What more could you ask for? I get it. I get it on offense, but their defense has kind of, pretty quietly taken steps back here over the past couple of years, and they have not done a great job of replacing some of that talent.
Yeah, so, they definitely took a step back. I think they're in a point where
I'd argue they're
at such a high level that they're going to be there at the end of the year.
I'd argue they're in their own tier below Kansas City and Baltimore.
Okay, so you would put Baltimore above them, which is fair.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the second tier is the Texans, Broncos, Chargers, and Bengals. As far as teams that, like, if you were telling me to, and we always like to use the gambling analogy, but if you were telling me to sprinkle something on a team to perhaps make the AFC Championship, these would be the 4 teams that I would say before the season starts and before we see anything that I think are the most intriguing. I think these are the threats to the Texans when it comes to you get in the playoffs and you see these teams. Much like the Chargers last year, we kind of thought the Chargers were in the same situation as the Texans, and they ended up meeting, and the Texans ended up kicking their ass. Obviously a new season, but these would be my second tier teams. I don't put Pittsburgh in that tier. So when it comes to localizing it, I really don't look at Pittsburgh and say, Oh God, you're gonna have to see these guys in January, and it's gonna be a real problem if you see them. I don't see much of a high ceiling for the Pittsburgh Steelers based on what they've done.
Yeah, if Pittsburgh was on the Texans schedule and I had already played the win-win loss game, I would have put them as a win. And this trade, I still would have put them as the win if I'd played the win-win loss game. And Pittsburgh, to me, they started the day as the third best team in the AFC North. They finished the day as the third best team in the AFC North. They're not better than the Cincinnati Bengals. I know the record last year said they were. They're not better than this year's Bengals coming up. Like, they're not going to be better than Cincinnati. And I totally agree with the Bengals being in here. The Broncos, especially if Bo Nix, stays hot after that rookie year, and then this Chargers team, adjusting, getting deeper into how Harbaugh wants to do things, understanding what went wrong at the back end of the season for them, so that doesn't happen again to them. Should they be presented with that opportunity? Yeah, this is a perfect second tier.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing that I am interested in, and this could be me eating some crow, but I think if we look at another coach that was hired when DeMeco Ryans was, it feels like Sean Payton is setting himself up very, very nicely. And their defense was better than the Texans last year. Like it statistically, it was right up there with the Texans and slightly above. And I thought this was interesting. And this is really when I started seeing this. Their offensive line, Field Yates put it out. They were first in pass block rate and they were second in run block rate. And it's, you look at the Texans' problems and the problems that the Texans have, or the uncertainties, I should say. It's not a problem till we actually see it, but it was a problem last year, was building an offensive line and the opposite side of the ball compared to the coach's specialty. And Sean Payton got the more than any of us could have anticipated out of Bo Nix last year, which I guess if you're a Sean Payton guy and you believe that he's an offensive mind, that makes sense. But they also have built a really, really good defense, and they've built a really, really good offensive line. And they've also added some weapons to put their quarterback in better position, at least we think. So as I look at these teams, I still think the Chargers are going to be pretty good too. I think Justin Herbert could be one of those guys who just boom emerges and has like a elite season. I'm not completely dismissing that. We know what Joe Burrow can do, but with what Sean Payton has done, and we'll have to see how Bo Nix handles week 2. I know the price was costly for the Broncos. I still think the Texans made the right move, but I do think Sean Payton's kind of setting himself up to where we probably need to take the Broncos more serious. The point where, if you're talking about sprinkles, I would almost sprinkle something on the Broncos winning the AFC West at this point, depending on what kind of odds you can get.
Yeah, they got swept by the Chargers last year, and they beat the Kansas City Chiefs when the Chiefs rested everybody at the end of the year. And so, in games that mattered, they got swept by the Chiefs, is one game that mattered. And then they got swept by the Chargers. So they need to flip that. But with all the challenges that Sean Payton had taking over the team, and then the makeover they had to give them year 1 to year 2, how good it looked in year 2, that's a very clearly ascending team. And they're ascending at a rate that is much faster than I would tell you all these other teams in this tier are. Like, the Broncos are catching up. If you believe the Texans are ahead of them, the Broncos are catching up to the Texans. It's worth noting, too, the other 3 teams with the Texans in this tier, none of them are favored to win their division. Like, you got to go through the Ravens if you're the Bengals, and you got to go through the Chiefs if you're the Broncos and the Chargers. Yet again, the advantage of the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans being god-ass awful.
Yeah. Hold on just a sec. What is that? Now, with all this talk about tiers, I do think we need to have a moment of silence for the Miami Dolphins. It was a nice little second tier-ish run for the Miami Dolphins, but that is a sinking ship, and it is over. That is a dumpster fire watch with no ceiling. They are gone. So pour one out. Say your prayers, do whatever you got to do for the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are an absolute dumpster fire with no identity.
Unless Tua is just way more awesome than we think he is, that's not really going anywhere. That defense is stinky. I'd say this though, Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane, get ready to shoulder the load because I get Jalen Waddle's there, but they're going to get Tyreek the ball enough to keep him from whining and moaning and bitching. And
that's inevitable. Tyreek Hill wants to trade is inevitable. Spoiler alert, week 5, Tyreek Hill's unhappy. Tyreek Hill's pissed. That's the end.
This definitely feels like the Dolphins could be headed towards a reset year where this year's not going the way we want it to. At the end of the year, the coach gets fired. They kind of hit a little bit of a reset button. You bring in a new offensive mind with Tua. He can't really go anywhere because of the contract. And you just kind of hit the reset button at the end of the year for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think that's potentially where we're headed with the Dolphins. And Mike McDaniel kind of feels like he's kind of lost control a little bit there. So keep an eye on that. That'll be a we talk about the Texans benefit. There's a Bills benefit to them. That's not a great division right now. So there's a big benefit for the Bills there. Yeah. That's 100% kind of where they're at. So it's gone with Mike McDaniel. On the super chat here on SNL. You ain't never hate. Swarm. HDAV Traveler says, afternoon, Landry, Cody, and friends. Afternoon, mi amigo.
Good to see you, my friend.
Our Wags. Welcome back, Landry. Cody rocked it last week. I'm sure Cody did his thing.
Yeah, so they changed the names. So I recognize some people, and then sometimes it goes back to the YouTube name. So I don't know why YouTube's doing that, but
what are they doing? They're changing the names to what?
Yeah, so it used to be Wags used to just be Wags. You'll see it no more JB Allen the Annihilator. It's whatever his at name is. So YouTube changed that. So if you don't recognize somebody in the chat, you'll figure out who they are.
Man, I didn't even notice that. Goodness gracious. I just thought I thought maybe there was people had multiple accounts or something like that, and it was just kind of.
It showed up Friday. I did the research this weekend to find out what the hell was going on, and people are not happy with YouTube with that one.
So let me know if you disagree or agree with the second tier. I think this is the second tier. I hate Sean Payton, but the job that he's done with the O-line and the defense, I think deserves a hell of a lot of credit.
It's worth noting, I wanted Sean Payton nowhere near the Houston Texans.
I hate him.
But you could still say he did a good job, for that his team. I don't know if things would look the exact same here in Houston. Who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of a make or break type of thing where you gotta kind of figure out what they're made of and what Bo Nix looks like. I mean, but as far as the job he's done, I remember Hannah giving me a hard time for shitting on him so much, Hannah McNair, and I was just like, I don't like the guy. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, he also had an interview with him.
Interviewing the guy. He's a jackass, and then the very next day, he's crapping on him through Colin Cowherd. So I was like,
that made me so
like he's a slime ball. He's a scumbag. I don't like him, and I think Drew Brees is better than he gets credit for. He acts like he took Davis Mills and made him God or something. He was a Pro Bowl performer before. So, but I do think the way that they play football. And the way they played football last year, if they build on that, I think that's kind of a team that could be good in the postseason. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that goes. But yeah, I'll give him credit when it's due. And good season last year, good pieces. See what goes down.
I just looking at these second tier teams. I'd much rather see the Chargers come to NRG Stadium for Saturday afternoon wildcard weekend than the Broncos.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So I put out a question on X yesterday, and I just asked, who are the top 5 Houston Texans? And not the most important, because if you're going to say most important, I think obviously it all goes to the quarterback. So, but as far as being best at their job, who are the top 5 Texans? And I said that Derek Stingley is kind of the unquestionable best, and it's kind of rare because I think we got close to 50 different top 5s, and every single one of them had Derek Stingley at the very top. And I think we would both agree that he is best at his job right now than anyone else on the team when it comes to playing their position and playing at the level that he's played at the last year plus. But the question is, can you win it all with a cornerback as your best player? In other words, this year, I saw you ask the question on Friday, like, what does the next step mean for CJ Stroud? Do we need to see like Will Anderson kind of be in that discussion or CJ Stroud be in that discussion? Or is it sustainable for Derek Stingley to be your best player and you be able to take that next step that they've never taken and kind of obsess over?
Can you? Yes. I would tell you the likelihood is much lower than if the best player on your team's the quarterback or a pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I would tell you there's a chance Will Anderson could end up as the best player at the end of the year, which would
he was my number 2. He's my number 2.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Will Anderson being the best player at the end of the year, that would flip it. Then all of a sudden it's a edge rusher or a defender, however you want to. It's a defensive lineman.
And 2 edge rushers are in the top 5 in fairness on my list.
Yeah, can you? Yes, you can. It's not as likely as if the best player was a defense. And it goes to show you just how deep some of the positions are, because you can have the 7th best quarterback and he's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You could have the 4th, 5th best pass rusher and he's awesome. And those guys may just still not be as good at their job as Derek Stingley is at his job, which is on any given Sunday, the best cornerback in football, or at the very least, the 2nd best cornerback in football.
The thing that I think is interesting, like when you do exercises like this, like I know it's low hanging fruit kind of whenever you're when you're at this point of the year and you're kind of in June and you're trying to get through June. So a lot of times lists are questionable, but I think like as far as assessing the organization and where they are, I think that the interesting thing about this type of question, because I agree with everything you said, but I think it's also symbolic of the fact that the Texans right now, because of how good their defense is, and because of the fact that you do have skill position guys, at least in the discussion, like Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, like they're both in the top 5. We don't know about the young wide receivers. Maybe they could, at the end of the year, creep into the top 10. Don't have a single offensive lineman in there, which could be a problem. But I do feel like the Texans, like on one hand, you can say, well, you have a defensive-minded coach and it's an offensive league, but they're also kind of building a team that I don't think is very CJ dependent. And I think that's a really, really good thing when we start talking about tiers and you talk about creeping up in the division, because or in the conference, I should say, because I think Buffalo is very Josh Allen dependent. Like he has to save all butts at certain times. And I think him and Lamar Jackson are so good that they're able to keep you up there near the top of the AFC. But eventually you're going to hit a wall when you're too dependent on the quarterback. We saw it with Deshaun, Joe Burrow right now. They have to score 50 points a game. They lost. I think they had more losses when scoring 35 or more than the entire NFL last year.
Oh.
So when you look at this exercise, on one hand you say, well, the quarterback can't be the 6th best, but on the other side, you can't be too dependent on your quarterback, and you kind of have to build a situation around him. Now, the Texans are going to have a good offensive system, and they're going to have to at least protect him a little bit more and maximize stuff out of the O-line. But I do think they've done a good job of what my biggest complaint was in the Deshaun era, and really what my complaint was early on in the CJ era, of the save all but formula that I always talk about with the quarterback. So I do think they've done a good job at that. Is it going to be enough? But I do think the defense like kind of raises your floor.
Was CJ in your 5?
No.
Okay.
Was he in yours?
No, he wouldn't be in mine. No.
Yeah, I have Stingley, Will, Nico, Daniil, and Mixon.
The Mixon one is like, how many QBs are doing it better than CJ versus how many QBs are doing it better than Mixon? Yeah, the Mixon, that'd be close. Yeah, Mixon Mixon was the one that I thought about. I mean, he came in last year. I mean, he's got to be one of the 10 best running backs in football, right? 10, 12? Like, I don't know. You could probably make some sound arguments that CJ wasn't one of the top 15 quarterbacks in football last year.
Yeah,
overall output.
Like, am I selling my CJ Stroud stock? I wouldn't sell. I mean, I wouldn't sell the stock.
Well, that's
it. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's based on the performance and the talent they have. Like,
what you're talking about really is the floor. Like, you establish a good floor because the team can succeed if the quarterback's not having a great day. The ceiling, where you find the ceiling, is how good is the quarterback.
Yeah,
like, that's really what I feel like you're establishing with. If the team's built well, 21 out of the 22 spots, if they show up and the quarterback doesn't, you can still win football games. It's like, where can you go if the quarterback's way better than he has been?
The other question I have is, like, with CJ is, like, how much are they going to ask him to do, and how much easier are they going to make it on him? Like, that's the other question you have about CJ, which we won't know until, I mean, I guess we won't completely know. So that
it feels like he's getting a lot more than he had last year, based on the way he's talked about it.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be. I mean, he's going to be fine. He's not going to be asked to do too much. And I also, like, if you look at, I think this would be an interesting exercise. And I don't know that it's really happened too often. We probably have to go back to the 90s or even beyond, I think. How many times has a team had the best edge duo and the best cornerback duo? Because as much as we sit here and say, well, can a cornerback be your best? Well, when the other guys, probably you have a good roster and he might be 7th, 8th, 9th, depending on where you want to put Kamari Lassiter. I know it's only been 1 year, but when you have the best cornerback duo and you have the best edge duo, I don't know how many times that's happened. Like, it's hard to imagine that it's happened too often. And I know that I'm not sitting here saying this is going to be one of the best defenses of all time, but, like, if you look at, like, Jalen Ramsey is that even a declining Jalen Ramsey, teams are still willing to pay him $20+ million in trade for him. Like, the Rams traded a hell of a lot to acquire him. They ended up winning the Super Bowl. The Dolphins, they were willing to pay him. And then the Steelers, they were willing to pay him and they were willing to trade for him. You have edge guys that just, I mean, the edge market is absolutely insane with what these guys are getting now. And you have a team that has the best edge duo and the best corner duo, and that's not something that happens very often.
I'm just perusing through some recent total defenses, and it's like I'm having a hard time coming up with names because I can catch you with a couple of, like, nice combos, but nothing where it's, check mark both those boxes: best edge rush and best cornerbacks. Yeah. It's not any time in the past 7-8 years, right off the top of my head, as I'm looking at it or thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the strengths. Like, the strengths, obviously, we know what the weaknesses are of the Texans, and it's on the other side of the rock. But it's just, I don't want to sit here and say it's like all time, but it is interesting. Sir Wag says Stingley needs to be consistent year in, year out. He has been the last year plus.
30 straight games. He's been pretty consistent.
Yeah. Yep. But it's insane. The curious case of Jalen Ramsey also is kind of funny. Like, I remember 2017 when he had the interview after the Deshaun game where they asked him, they were like, what did you make of Deshaun coming in for Tom Savage? He's like, come on, man. Deshaun should have been in there the whole time. Anybody knows that, blah, blah, blah. And then they make their run. He makes his scene, and now all of a sudden he's on his 4th squad. It's kind of wild. I think it's more of a personality thing. I think Jalen Ramsey's a little bit extra. I think we know that. Derek Stingley's the opposite of that. Like, Derek Stingley's he's at the same level that 2017, 18, 19, however far back you want to go, Ramsey was. He just wants to play football and chill. He's not gonna He's not going to add anything extra. It's not going to get bad if things don't go according to plan.
From a personality profile, I mean, you want the corner to be Stingley. You don't hear from him. You only see him when some team challenges him and he makes it look like it was a silly idea to challenge him. That's far, far more preferential than the guy that drove a Brinks truck to work one time.
Yeah, he's a lot. He's very much a lot. But in the big scheme of things, to circle back to the Steelers, I think the Steelers are kind of on a mediocre treadmill. And you saw the report from Schefter. I kind of feel like TJ Watt and JJ Watt are in the same position right now, where you're not you haven't been a Super Bowl contender really ever. And early on, JJ, like that Texans team had things gone their way without injuries, that would happen. But once he got into his prime, after Schaub kind of fell off, you're kind of in a situation where you were going to be bad. Quarterback was changing every year.
It's Patrick Hoyer, Osweiler, rookie Deshaun.
You wasted some all-time great years, and I feel like TJ's kind of doing the same thing right now. And obviously, money can probably solve it. He'll get a contract, and I'm happy to be a Steeler. But it is very what TJ Watt is dealing with is very, very JJ Watt, like when he was the best player in football.
See, I'm very interested to see how far TJ wants to take this, because I do wonder if there's an element of I do not want to end up like JJ to him, where, and yes, you mentioned the money. You pay him enough money, he'll shut up. That's the Myles Garrett thing. But I wonder if there is an element of that, and if he's willing to take it far enough, it makes it easier to get out, to find your way out. I mean, Landry, if I was the Buffalo Bills, I'd call the Steelers today and offer 3 first-round picks for TJ Watt.
That's a lot. I don't know.
Well, Buffalo's got to get over the hump.
Well, I think their salary cap is kind of. They've been getting rid of players though for a while, but yeah, I don't know.
That's the. And there's really not a lot of teams in the AFC that can do it, but like Cincinnati to a lesser extent, but Pittsburgh, like they could really jack some stuff up in the landscape of the AFC if they dump TJ Watt or Trey Hendrickson to the right team.
Oh yeah. But what if it was like a Green Bay or something like that? Like it could be.
Yeah, obviously if those guys go to the NFC, it doesn't matter as much. But if you told me Buffalo got one of those guys.
Well, that's always been, there's historic proof of like a guy kind of shifting the power of the upper tier. Started with the Cowboys when they got Charles Haley from the 49ers, and that they ended up winning 3 Super Bowls after that. You saw Neil Smith go from Kansas City to Denver. They ended up winning a couple of Super Bowls. Reggie White went from Philadelphia to Green Bay. He was kind of the missing piece. DeMarcus Ware, I mean, not as high. He wasn't playing as at high of a level, but he went to Denver, and that was kind of the missing piece with that Manning squad. So you've seen multiple times throughout NFL history where like an edge guy goes and just completely elevates the way a team is playing, kind of shifts the pecking order of the top of the league or certain conferences.
All it would take is one of these teams in the AFC to get a little frisky, and you could probably pry one of those guys away. Now, is that a prudent move by those teams? We can have that debate and have that conversation. But that is my worry with these 2 pass rushers just kind of hanging around, is if either one of them end up in Buffalo, it becomes a much more difficult situation to handle the Bills. And then the Ravens are probably not in the equation because it's in the division. But if one of them ended up on the, Kansas City Chiefs, that would suck.
Yeah, the Chiefs are always a team that you got to look at. So,
like Andy Reid looking around like, yeah, I want to make sure I get one more crack at this thing.
He's going to have some cracks.
We saw what they did to our guy when there was so much pass rush. Like, let's give Chris Jones an outside presence like Hendrickson or Watt and see what we can do.
Sir Wags on the soup says that cornerbacks should scare QBs. Stingley does now, but Ramsay doesn't anymore. Yeah, I would agree. Sometimes quarterbacks are willing to go at Ramsay now.
Yeah, it's you throw into Pat Surtain or throw into Derek Stingley when they're close to the guy. It's not ideal.
And they're bringing up that TJ Watt is injury prone. Well, maybe he's even more like his brother than we initially thought. Maybe there's even more to it. So, yeah, AJ kind of was on the back end too.
Yeah,
that could be another lesson.
TJ's had a little bit better luck with it than JJ has.
Yeah, get your bread, and go about it. But you got to think that kind of emerges. So,
I mean, we can call him injury prone. He's played 2 consecutive seasons of every game. So
yeah, he's banged up a lot though. God.
That's fine. As the guy shows up, I mean, defensive end, the guy shows up on Sunday. I don't give a crap what the injury report says. Monday through Saturday. Play on Sunday.
Yep. All right, so we're getting through June, man. The worst month of the football season. And it's on to July. We are
June's over.
23 days away from the start of training camp. How about that?
Right around the corner, isn't it?
It'll be fun, man. We look forward to it. We appreciate everyone for rolling through. SNL Live at 4, Locker Room Stream tonight at 10:30. I'm going to do an organizational chart. Like the pecking order of being elite for the Texans. An organizational chart.
Okay.
The straws that stir the drink.
Okay.
In other words, 23 days to find Will Fuller, according to Patrick.
I'm working on it, guys.
I asked someone that works for the team that should know. Said no idea.
It's an effort. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think he likes to lay low. There we go. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Subscribe, like, ride along, and always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, whether it's June, July, or freaking January, we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.